Our brain loves habit. This is why it's so hard to create good habits when we have habits that are not working for us, right? Our brain is actually wanting to conserve energy. And so what it starts to do is it starts to make up a picture. Like I'm looking at Dean right now, and my brain made up a picture of what Dean does on the daily and what is normal behavior. And so when Dean does something a little outside of that, my brain takes that in as danger. And so what begins to happen is we start to trigger each other.
You have more power over your health than what you've been told. This is the Healthy Lifestyle Solutions podcast, and I'm your host, Maya Acosta. I'm passionate about finding healthy lifestyle solutions to support optimal human health. If you're willing to go with me, together we can discover how simple lifestyle choices can help improve our quality of life and increase longevity in a big way. Let's get started. We frequently bring old traumas and habits into our romantic relationships that lead couples to aggravate one another. But how do we cultivate a conscious connection that is loving, fun, and thriving? We'll dive in as Michele and Dean Yasuda talk about shifting our focus from blaming and criticizing to seeing our spouse as our ally. As always, you can find the full bio and links to each guest on our website, healthylifestylesolutions.org. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. So happy
Yes.
to be here. Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having us on your talk show. Thank you.
Can we learn about what both of you individually were already doing? Dean, your background is in fitness, or at least that's what you were doing, is supporting clients in fitness. And Michele, you are a spiritual practitioner. So tell us about that first, and then we can move on to the programs that you're now using.
I've been a fitness professional for about 12, maybe 15 years now. And before that, I was always into some kind of fitness. And what I realized throughout my years is that getting to know my clients was a lot deeper than I thought it was going to happen, because eventually my clients started sharing a lot of things with me, and I'm like, are you sure you should be sharing things like this with me? And what I found out later is that when you move your body, it releases a lot of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so working out creates this opportunity for you to, you just start talking. and some people experience fear from working out because they have these emotions and feelings, and then they get scared and don't want to work out. So our body does so much. You move it and things start coming out. So learning that I was starting to coach people, I said, well, I'm not really qualified to do this. And so let me find out how I can, become a better fitness and individual coach. And so that was the start of the journey. And then I met Michele, and
and we actually met at a spiritual center at a picnic, and of all things. And what I was getting up to back then was learning really about myself first. And I was learning how to be a space where I hold the essence of myself and others. And I was learning all about that, and really learning about what I felt about the universe. Like, what is it all about? And when I met the Hendricks, and when we started looking at what we entered the Hendricks world, this is Katie and Gay Hendricks, through their book Conscious Loving, which is been in print for over 40 years now. And it's an amazing transformational book. And we were looking for more tools. So we decided once we were together as a couple, we thought we want other couples to have as good a time as we're having. And so, I wonder what kind of tools we might find. And so that's what led us to becoming coaches. And it was one yes after another, and recognizing this was the path for us. And so 6.5 years later, we're deeply grateful for all of the tools that we've learned for our own relationship, as well as being able to share them with couples. And we do a lot of individual coaching as well still, and really enjoy that.
you found that what you both had to bring to the table actually worked together. So not only are you in partnership with yourselves, but in partnership with your own practice and working together. I like what Dean was talking about, that as he worked with his clients, things started to come up. And as we move on with our conversation, Dean, you'll also share with us how you have worked with both of us. I would say specifically me, in terms of how I can release some of that fear that gets me stuck. And so I'm becoming more and more aware that our body is continuously talking to us, and we just have to know how to pay attention.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, absolutely. And to realize that actually the wisdom that we have inside of us doesn't just come from our thinking brain. And I think that's, I've always been a thinker and ideas and a visionary. And when I first started doing more somatic practices, I realized that there was this whole rest of me that has intelligence, that has a story to tell. And I started to learn how to recognize my fear responses when those came up, and recognize my inner yeses and nos, and recognize that through the lens of body sensations, which is something I had absolutely no idea about before meeting the Hendricks.
I'm lighter. I smile more. I'm more relaxed. I'm more easygoing. It's the person, I guess it's who I am without all the fear.
Oh,
Exactly. Yeah.
that's a great discovery, actually.
Yes.
That's a beautiful thing to presence. That it is. It's your essence self, which is underneath the layers of fear and the
Yeah.
things that the stories we make up and all of that. Oh, that's beautiful.
Let's talk about the work that you do. Can you explain to us, just for people who might not be familiar with these two programs that you're trained in? So, the Big Leap Coaches program, and also you lightly touched on Hendricks and conscious loving.
Well, I also happen to be the enrollment consultant for the Hendricks Institute, so I definitely have the information. So the Big Leap Coach, what that's based on is Gay Hendricks wrote a book called The Big Leap, and it's really about how we can expand our capacity for love, abundance, creativity every day, and to inspire others to do the same. And so the whole program of becoming a Big Leap Coach is really about that. It's about learning tools. I like to think of it as the how of consciousness. So learning these tools on how to live, practical tools that we can actually express in the world the way we want to. So Big Leap coaches learn how to do that. And then we were super fortunate to be able to be in a program called the Leadership and Transformation Program, which no longer exists. We got in pretty much at
At
the
the end,
end.
yeah.
Yeah, at the tail end. And I don't know if you want to share a little bit about what you experienced as that.
Oh, well, so much. What I experienced the most is how much fear I was always in. You
Hmm.
know, I thought, well, I grew up, I'm an Asian man, and we don't get, and men in general, we don't get scared and we don't get angry. My big one was I don't get scared or sad. And so, not even knowing that I was scared probably all the time.
Hmm.
And so, because it was, you know, I talk about working out, and why I worked out a lot was because I was anxious and I didn't know what to do with it. So I would work out, and yeah, I could work out for 2 hours and I'd feel great. And I'd get out of the gym like, oh yeah, I'm feeling good. And then 10 minutes later, all the fear and worries all come back, and I'm like, now what do I do? Go back working out. It's like, and it just gets tiring after a while. So
Hmm.
learning how to recognize my body intelligence so I can connect it with my big brain and have a whole body experience. Oh, it was magical to really feel, actually, just to learn how to feel my feelings.
Yeah.
It's a big change for me.
In that particular program, we were like apprentices. So we would be in seminars, and the leadership and transformation participants would be supporting the training. And so getting to learn how to guide others in the tools. And so that was a big part of our learning. And so the Big Leap Coach program continues, and we're just fortunate to be able to ripple the other work out into the world.
You were holding your programs, I'm assuming, in person, and then the pandemic hit, and you had to transform or pivot, like many people, to this virtual world. Is that how it worked out for you?
Yeah. We
Yeah.
were at first scared, like I imagine everyone else was. How are we going to have a business? Dean's a fitness coach. He works with people in person, and we were able to really land on our feet and realize how many people needed us more than ever
Mhm.
as coaches and for support, especially relationships. Relationships really there was a lot of pressure that began to happen for couples who weren't used to being home, uh, families who weren't
Yeah.
used to being home together all day and trying to figure out school for kids, and just even partners being able to be together to that degree really increased our work. So we wound up working as more than ever. We of course started offering online programs. We started coaching online, and it really
Yeah.
was. It expanded our reach. We worked with a couple in West Africa. We worked with people all over the world, and that was super exciting. Not something that we thought would happen for us. So that was definitely one of those gifts that came out of a very challenging time.
Yeah. Even for my fitness, I can Zoom. I'm like, I was very against it at the beginning of like, I like to be in person with people. Like, I don't want to look at a screen. And as I released that,
Mm.
then clients started showing up. And I was okay. Like, oh, this is not too bad. I don't have to go anywhere. I can just sit down in front of my computer and 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 coach them
Mm.
and create fitness programs for them. So it did turn out to be a blessing,
Mm.
even though, I mean, a blessing for us, but
Yeah.
in a bigger picture, not so much.
When you're working with couples, what are some of those common challenges? Because I'd like for our listeners to kind of have an idea of how you work with people and how maybe you work with us. So people come to you, whether they're individuals or couples, and they're dealing with something. There's a challenge or a struggle that's preventing that closer, non-judgmental love to exist. What are some of those struggles that you see?
So, well, one of the most common issues that comes up for couples is that we all go through a phase in relationship when we first meet, when the our biology is connecting us. It's wanting us to merge with this person. And so there's all kinds of hormones going, there's all kinds of good feelings going. And it was designed this way so that human beings could continue to exist. This is a good thing. What is new is that we're staying together. Couples are wanting to form a relationship based not just on biology, not just on creating children or whatever that might be, but actually to develop relationships that are about holding each other's highest and best, and helping each other be creative in the world, and all those amazing things that we can do when we go into our higher thinking brain, and when we're having a good time, right? Well, what happens for our brain though is that our brain wants to regulate. It automatically wants to regulate the person that we're with. It's our brain doesn't want to work hard, right? So our brain loves habit. This is why it's so hard to create good habits when we have habits that are not working for us, right? There's Our brain is actually wanting to conserve energy. And so what it starts to do is it starts to make up a picture. Like I'm looking at Dean right now, and my brain made up a picture of what Dean does on the daily and what is normal behavior. And so when Dean does something a little outside of that, my brain takes that in as danger. And so what begins to happen is we start to trigger each other. And what magically seems to be the case with human beings is that we resonate in towards the familiar. And the familiar is not always a good thing. Some of us have grown up in very traumatic households. I don't think anyone gets through childhood without trauma, regardless of what household you grew up in. We are in a community where there's things that can happen. So what happens is we get imprinted and of what relationship means, what's normal, what is a relationship for? And so what starts to happen after that phase of coming together is a lot of triggering each other, a lot of scaring each other. And yeah, so I'll pause there to see if you had any questions about that in particular.
The word imprinting really stands out and it makes a lot of sense. I tend to think of programming, the programming that I bring into the relationship or to any experience. But imprinting really paints a great picture for me. And it makes a lot of sense that I come in this way expecting you to kind of, I don't know, be in my head, like
Yeah,
think like me,
read my
behave how I
mind.
expect you to be. Yeah. I like, why aren't you exactly the way that I expect you to be?
Yes, that's very much what happens. And so then and it's like a cascade of opening up old habits. So I don't know if you want to speak to some of the things that happened I would say, in our relationship.
For me, it brought up a lot of fear of, for me, like showing up in my relationship. Am I showing up? And then or am I being all that I can be? Can I be fully who I am with this person? And then often I get scared and people get scared. Like, can I really be who I am with this person? and and so learning that we're both going to get triggered and we both are going to be in fear was a big deal to really like recognize, like, yes, we're going to be in fear together and we're going to have triggers. So now what can we do? And so really, being open, first of all, both of us being both partnership being open to learning and discovering new things is really the first step. You
Mm.
can't just you can't pull one partner or the other pull the other to become one. You have to both be in a conscious direction
Mm.
to want a relationship that's going to be loving and thriving and having fun.
Maybe we'll talk about things that we do that cause that conflict. But right now, you're describing just how we kind of trigger each other, not knowing these things. So I could be triggering my partner by being disconnected or being an avoidant and had no idea that what I was doing. I thought I was being, a loyal individual. Next, I'm there for my partner. Do we want to talk more about how we trigger each other, or do we want to talk about how you work with couples to get past those challenges?
Well, I was just thinking about a concept that's really that tells the whole story of this. So when we're introducing the idea that we are the creator of our experience. So this is a different way of thinking about things. When we look at it and say, "Oh, well, I feel triggered because of your behavior." Well, you're doing this and I would be okay if you weren't doing this. And one of the big transformational moves is to recognize that I actually chose you of the billions of people in the world. I chose you to be my partner. And what's that about? And Katie Hendricks calls that central casting. So I like to think of it as a script in our play. And so I'm going to put man who will tell me that I'm too much, too loud. This was an old script I used to run. Yeah, too much and too loud. So I'm going to find the man. So here, that's your role. And then you might have a role for me.
Yeah, I'm looking for a woman that is controlling and is going to tell me what to do all the time.
Right. And
And put
so,
the
and
sun
then
on it.
there. And so now I've got my role. He's got his role. And fortunately, these are roles that we didn't play with each other, but we played in the past in relationships. And by the time we got together, we had learned about ourselves and learned about these aspects of ourselves. Like for me, I needed to actually accept myself as someone who's vibrant and passionate, how someone else might call loud. That's actually who I am. I like to say I'm an Italian from New Jersey, and I have a strong personality. So what I actually landed in is, oh, I actually I'm available to have a relationship with someone who loves all of me. And so the amazing, miraculous thing is we don't have to go to another relationship to find that. We can actually create that within our relationship once we wake up to the fact that we're actually creating something in the first place. That if I start loving myself, Dean will pick up on that vibe and he'll see that that's what I'm available for. I'm available to be loved in my full self. And then I'll start picking up on the vibe that Dean doesn't want to be controlled. He actually wants to, he's a whole person, and I can see him as whole. And I can begin to, so we start to treat each other differently because of how we're actually showing up. So does that make sense? So that's something that we love to work with couples with.
When it comes to just conventional therapy, or at least experience that I've had in the past, a lot of times you stay stuck in the story. So you talk, whether it's working in the same room with your partner, you start doing the whole finger pointing. Well, my partner did this and this and that, and which is a tendency that I have, which is I want to tell on him. This is what he did. And that's what we do. So what you're doing is you're teaching us to take responsibility for our own selves, which is very difficult for me to stay on in my own lane. Very difficult. But yes, it's making sense in terms of how you're saying that when we become aware that there's this higher purpose, this wonderful gift that we have of partnering with someone who will then help us to grow, and we become aware of why we chose that person, and we become aware of where our triggers lie, then that's where the power lies for our own individual experience.
Oh, absolutely. And I was just thinking about the other key move, which is totally related to what we're talking about, which is to move from blame and criticism to seeing one another as allies. And I recently had someone who was asking me, well, what does that mean? How do I see someone as ally when they're hurting me, when I see them as hurting me, right? It can be really confusing. And it really is a twist of, it's like a shift of thinking from this idea of, like you said, victim, right, into creator energy. If I'm creating my experience, then I can see you and everything you're doing as for me. And I can see that it's an opportunity for my learning. I can also learn my no and my yes. And this is something that I know we wanted to talk about today, which is our holding back maybe and not telling our truth to each other, and how damaging that can be to relationship, and what it's like to be real and honor our own inner yeses and nos.
Yes. I think the most difficult thing that I discovered early on in my marriage is that we are both people pleasers. I mean, I think anyone that knows us knows that about us. We're like, yeah, we'll say yes. We don't want to hurt people. And the other thing is the fear of saying no, of setting your strong boundaries and just standing your ground and saying, well, I have to do what's best for me. It's okay. But so you're not saying a harsh no. You're trying to find a way that you can work without compromising your own self. So yes, boundaries are a thing that I always want to kind of talk about. So when you're initially at the beginning of a relationship, you're on your best behavior. So,
Right.
and you're in the honeymoon phase. So everything's a yes, nothing annoys you. Although, and as a result, we don't address the little things along the way that can add up. So then we get stuck. So, okay. So then what do we do once we get stuck? We come to you, and then you teach us
Yeah.
about boundaries.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things is to get support. One of the things that has always made our mentor, Katie Hendricks, sad is how people reserve going for support, couple support, for when there's problems, instead of actually seeing that we take our car for a tune-up, we to go to the dentist to get preventative dental care to take care of, but we don't do anything for our relationships. We think we have to manage it by ourselves. And having outside perspective is so supportive, especially when we're in where we get a little bit entangled with each other, which is what's mine, what's yours. Am I being too controlling, or am I not actually speaking up? Like, it can be really sticky to know where we're at. So to have someone else to be able to support us in that is amazing. And there are so many resources for people who don't feel ready or don't have the resources to have a coach. There's so many amazing resources out there to learn about how to have a conscious relationship, how to speak with each other, right, from a place of 100% responsibility. Yeah.
As you spoke about that earlier, which I'm really glad you brought that up about the 100% responsibility, because one of the gay Hendricks moves is when people are, when you're doing this,
Pointing out.
pointing and blaming at someone, to point that finger back at yourself. How am I creating this issue? How am I keeping this going on? And so really taking that responsibility, it was huge for me, because I was definitely it's your fault. If you didn't do this, then, and like, oh, when I had to do that to myself, like, how am I doing that? Ooh, how am I keeping this going? Ooh. So it was really eye-opening.
Yeah, that is a powerful move. And I want listeners to understand that when Dean's saying that, he means that with love and wonder.
Yes.
And you can hear it in your voice, but I just wanted to be clear about that, because that's something that it's not about turning that finger around and blaming ourselves, because that's the biggest problem. We're either pointing our finger out or pointing our finger in. Our inner critic is another whole, we could talk for hours about that, right? Our inner critics. And so I just wanted to point that out. Great. And I love that, because the bringing that finger back towards ourselves, getting curious, opening up to wonder. That's one of the things you were just asking about. How can we shift? Well, we can shift from blame to, I wonder what's really going on here. I wonder what I really want. And it just opens up a whole space. And in fact, I know, Maya, you've learned a little bit about the vagus nerve, and actually connects with, it relaxes and calms the vagus nerve, which is one of the fear systems that we have when our vagus nerve gets tripped. I don't know a whole lot of the science of it, but I know just enough to say that is calming. So I would encourage your listeners right now to try that out for yourself right now. Just create a pleasant sound. You might even put your hand on your chest and feel the vibration of the for thousands of years in spiritual traditions, people have made om sounds. They've made sounds with humming. And I think it's fascinating and amazing to see that there's science now to show that that actually calms the nervous system, that it creates openings, it creates connections for us. And so that's one of the ways that we can presence the fear that's going on, because like you mentioned before, it's going to happen. The honeymoon phase is going to end, and we're going to come into this new space that actually can become a celebratory phase, which can last forever. So we can move into something that's so much deeper and deeper, and I don't know what the other word is. I guess it's just deeper relationship than our honeymoon time, which in times, like you said, we forget ourselves, right? We sort of like don't notice the thing. We might not speak up about something. Little by little by little, things are adding up. Well, in the celebratory phase, we are full on being honest, 100% transparent. We're taking responsibility, and we're creating magic together. So that's possible for all relationships.
Coming from a place of wonderment or wondering what is going on really helps. And I can tell when we have the movement and the fear melters during our sessions, it really just helps us to get out of that fight or flight kind of mentality where you want to just be pointing fingers and fight, and just kind of, I love that I can see my husband as an ally. I'm beginning to have a new perspective on all of it. And I have found myself a couple of times saying, how did I create this? How am I creating this? And it is hard, Michele, because I do tend to point the finger at myself as well. But when I take a few steps back and see how things led up to this point, then I can see my responsibility. Like I can see the role that I played and what I created. One of the tools that you have taught us, it's the difference in how we communicate with our partner. And this is the blame talk versus conscious heart talk, which I'm going to read a couple of examples, and then I'd love to know, why is it so hard for us to talk like this with our partners? But here's an example when, say, I address my partner and I say, why were you flirting all night at the party? I could come from a different place and say, I got scared when I saw you talking in the corner. Or, you never talked to me about your feelings, as opposed to, I wonder what feelings I'm withholding. I notice I'm focusing on your withholding. And so many times when as you're teaching us how to communicate what's going on within us without finger pointing, you always ask us to kind of check in and see how we are feeling. Can we talk a little bit about that? That most of us have come from a place of either feeling sad or scared, or can you give our listeners an example of why it is, or why is it that we have a hard time sitting down with our partner and just being honest about how we're feeling?
Yeah, I was
It's a good
thinking of you
question.
sharing about how you didn't
Anger.
recognize fear, feelings inside of you.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a really good point. And Katie has taught us about the different feelings that we don't express. The anger, scared, sad, happy. And for me, angry and scared was big. So it can be very triggering for me if Michelle says, I feel angry. Can we talk about something?
If I was to say that,
Yeah.
you mean?
So
Oh,
if
right.
she's saying that to me, I get scared. Like, because she's just, and all she's doing is expressing a feeling. I feel angry, da 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 da. Oh, I'm scared already. I'm like, ah.
I'm afraid of being confronted. So when someone asks to talk to me, my anxiety goes up and I'm afraid. And I think it's because I'm afraid of being wrong. I guess I'm afraid of being that little girl that did something wrong. Like, I don't want to be wrong. I don't strive to be perfect, but I don't want to be wrong. How's that?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
what you just brought up
Yes,
is so
exactly.
amazing, because the perfectionist, it like, you don't want to be perfect, but there's an aspect of you that does want to be perfect, that thinks you have to be perfect. Yeah. I have one of my, I guess you could call it a trigger, but one of the hurts I have from the past is feeling like I'm going to get in trouble. And it's very deep in me that I'm going to get in trouble. Did I make a mistake? Making a mistake actually was terrifying for me, because somehow that means that I'm going to get in trouble, and I don't even know where that comes from. So that was really strong in me. So that's something that's a beautiful thing to presence. I think you had
I
a
have the
very
same thing.
different, oh, okay.
Actually, almost now that you're speaking about it, I had the same thing as a child with my dad, from anger, like, and then I'd be scared because he might not be loud in anger, but he was certainly facially and the way he spoke felt very angry to me. And so I would just shut down. And so anytime anger is brought up, or I feel angry, I get scared. Even if she's not exploding or anything, she just has some little upset, and she's just speaking from the truth, really being honest, the unarguable truth. She's saying, I'm feeling angry that I left socks on the chair. And it could be simple as that, but just hearing anger.
Except that would be me.
Yeah.
He doesn't leave his socks on the chair. That's me.
But just hearing the word anger, and I think what you're saying earlier about, for me, learning that my tight jaw that I've had for my whole life was anger that I didn't even notice that I had a feeling of anger, and it was all in my jaw. And usually, neck and shoulders, but mine was in my jaw, and it was just so tight all the time. And until working with Katie and Gay and learning from them, and how to recognize that and do. We talk about fear melters, and I guess we'll talk about that and how it really loosened my jaw. And I was like, wow, I had a lot of anger that I didn't express. And so that was for me, learning fear melters was another huge shift.
Yeah. And I just want to say, before we talk about fear melters, that one of the big moves is to start to recognize what our body sensations are
Mhm.
telling us. So another body sensation, so anger, like Dean mentioned, shoulders and neck. If you have shoulders and neck that's tight, your jaw, that tends to be the anger zone. Our stomachs, just like how people talk about butterflies in your stomach, our stomachs tend to be the fear zone.
Mhm.
Our chest and our throat tend to be, when we have sensations there, tend to be attached to sadness.
Yeah.
And we all experience joy in different ways. I know that for me, I can feel, and in fact, one of my favorite things to do is to see how I can recognize my inner yes and no by recognizing the sensations. So what I notice is love and joy feel like a great big yes to me. And so how does that feel in my body? So just right now, take a moment to think of someone or some place that you know you love and let yourself be in the feelings of that. What does that feel like in your body when you start to think about that person or place? And I notice for me, my chest opens a little bit. I get some spaciousness. It feels like openness. And I correlate that with how I can tell when something's a yes for me. There's an opening, there's spaciousness. And now we'll just take a little journey to know. Think of a recent upset just for a moment or two. So think of a recent upset and notice what happens in your body when you think of that upset. Do you get any body signals? And I know for me, it feels the opposite of the yes. I feel a constriction inside of me. I might feel a little flip in my belly, or I might actually, if I'm angry, I might have some tightness. But whatever it is, it's a contraction. And so what fear melters do, and these were created by Katie Hendricks, and what they are a way of moving out of the 4 ways that we take in fear. So we'll be brief in this, and if you want to learn more about it, you can Google it and or subscribe to our email list, and we share all the time tools about how you can experience fear and move that fear through. But there's 4 ways we take in fear. It's a freeze, a flee, a fight, and a faint. And the 4 fear melters are movements that help us to presence the fear and move the fear through. So we'll just pick one of them. So fight, since you brought up fight. So go ahead and show how you, or tell about how you use the fear melter of ooze.
Yeah. So for our listeners, get in any recent upset. Like, how do you argue back or fight back?
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily physically, but you can put your hands up, or you can have your jaw sticking out a little bit, or it can be very subtle, where you can just be looking at someone with very angry eyes, or like that nod, like mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so just feel what feels for you, as far as when you get fighty. And so the move to get out of anger is called ooze. And so what you want to do is it's just ooze like your seaweed in the ocean. So your shoulders, and really make it big, and so you can feel it in your chest, and your arms can be out to the side. You can also imagine if you had balloons tied to your arms and they're just floating around. Like, so just it's insert, and it's a slow movement. It's not a quick wiggle, it's an easy movement. And Katie will remind us it takes at least 2 minutes to start feeling a shift, especially if you're really angry about something. It takes at least 2 minutes of just moving, oozing around. And then make sure you're oozing your jaw. I know for me, because I've got tight jaw.
That's your biggie.
Moving your jaw around. If you can't see me, you can hear me talking and oozing out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And it's hard to maintain the constriction of anger when you're moving like an ooze. It feels a little goofy in my body, and I know that right away starts to melt some of the fear. And fear melters are a little weird at first. That's how I experience them. And what I noticed is that they work. And I'm glad, Maya, you mentioned that it's been supportive to you to move your body. And so yeah, so I want to pause there and just see if there's anything that you want to move into.
As we have gone through our sessions and gotten to know you a little bit more and done exercises, it's become very apparent to me that I experience these ways where these kinds of fears. I tend to freeze and I want to flee, and I feel like I'm going to faint. It's all the different kinds of fears, but I leave my body. I feel like I'm gone. Like I leave my body. I'm scared. I freeze. I I don't know what to say because I don't want to aggravate the situation. And I don't stand up for myself. I don't stand up for myself and I don't defend myself and I shrink. It's like I like a raisin, like I shrink because it's happening in my body.
That's right.
And I always try to solve everything from a place of um analyzing. So I'm always in the head, in my mind, trying to figure things out. To think that it's happening in my body and that I can support my body so that the rest of me can be freed up from it is wonderful.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, I noticed something recently that I was doing a lot of oozing, and I thought, well, I don't experience a lot of anger, and I was thinking I used to a lot, but that's not. It doesn't tend to be one that shows up a lot in my life, and so I started to really get curious about that. And what popped into my head is that my body is in a fight because I'm standing in front of a computer or sitting in front of a computer for so many hours now. That's not something that I used to do. And so, especially since COVID, this is my life. And so I recognize that my body is actually in a fight. And so I think I love that you brought up how recognizing it was good for your self-esteem to recognize your body was doing a thing that defies logic. And I think that's the part when you said about analyzing, that was me, figure everything out. Well, fear is not logical. And so if we're trying to figure out fear or move through fear from a place of logic, we're in trouble. So this is like, for me, it's a signal when things don't make sense. I get curious. I get curious and I look at either it's the universe doing something magical or I'm in fear.
And so, Dean, one of the exercises that one of the fear melters, I guess, that you had me do, which I thought was a little funny, is that sumo pose, like the
Yeah.
sumo wrestler.
Yes, that's a good one because I know I like to flee too. So sumo, you can call it mountain, you can call it a tree. So the sumo, you're gonna get a wide stance. You put your hands on your knees and you just kind of crouch down and you bounce a little so you feel yourself grounded to the ground. Like I'm not going anywhere. Like here I am. Here I am. You can also imagine yourself as a mountain where everything is just solid. You see a mountain, you're like, wow, it's solid. Just like, oh, here I am. And then there's other ways that I like to play with it too. Is so if you're standing up and you go up on your toes and you just drop down. So this way, if you're in public, you can do a sumo and people are like, oh, what are they doing? Or you can just stand there and just give a little drop. So you just go up on your tippy toes and drop down, and just imagine your feet growing roots into the earth. And it also helps for me anyway. When I do that, it kind of jolts me to like, okay, I'm here. I'm here. I'm not going to go away. I'm not going anywhere. And here I am. So yeah, there's just a few ways to play with that when you're out in public.
Yeah, that's what we like to talk about, mini melters. So
Yeah,
I'm
mini
glad
melters,
you brought
yeah.
that up because there's ways like oozing doesn't have to be your whole body moving like seaweed. It can actually just be your wrists. And so you can move your fingers around slowly. And since we did 2 of the fear melters, we can take you through you mentioned faint, that sometimes or actually freeze first, right? So you freeze first. So when we freeze, it's like, think about if a loud noise happens and your body just jolts and goes tight, and usually we lose our breath.
Hold that breath.
Yeah. And so when that happens, we can use a wiggle. So just wiggle your fingers and toes, wiggle your shoulders a little bit. So this one's a faster movement than the ooze. So it's a little bit of a quicker movement. And it's if you think about animals who or have an enemy, like someone chasing them, right? And they stop and they don't move. And then they do this big shake off, right? And so it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
So you can think of yourself as an animal wiggling something off. And then the faint, which is a fear response that not a lot of people talk about. And it's so common. And it's really when everything goes fuzzy and we might feel stupid. We might,
I don't know.
Huh?
Like, what happened? What just happened?
It's just that feeling of disconnection that we have. So we get disconnected from ourselves. We get disconnected from the people around us. And so what Katie Hendricks created was the love scoop. And I love this, where we can imagine an energy field around us that is pure love. And that's easy for me as a spiritual practitioner. I believe that we are surrounded by energy, and that energy is for us and is love. And we can reach out into that field of energy and bring it into our hearts or into our shoulders if our shoulders are needing some love.
And really use your whole body. Like really reach out.
Yes.
Because we're what are we doing that? Passive, yeah, sorry.
Oh, right.
The,
yeah. So when we're in a
passive-
faint, we're in a passive state.
Right.
So we want to make our love scoops active so that we're reactivating our brain and coming back. And you can mix up all the fear melters and do them all at the same time. A sumo love scoop is wonderful. A sumo ooze works. All of them can work together. And a lot of people will ask, well, what if I do the wrong fear melter? Doesn't matter. As long as you're moving, you're going to actually activate something. So
and these are also really, what's important about fear melters too is to practice. So one thing's always suggested is to practice in the morning when you're not in fear. So do like fear melter dances for 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. That way your body recognizes what you're doing. So because when you are in fear, most times you're not going to know what to do. Because once you're in fear, it's all gone.
All bets are off.
It's all gone. Everything is gone. So practicing it while you're conscious, your body will start moving. Or that's what I've noticed when I start to become, get in fear. Then I'll start. Oh, let me just.
You're creating a habit.
Creating a habit.
Our last session with you, you guided us sort of to revisit this year, 2021, and to look at it in segments of quarters, the first quarter, second quarter, like that. You had us release the things that we no longer wanted to hold on to, and then to keep the things that we wanted to keep. And for me, doing these physical body exercises are very significant. Like I really take that in, like my spirit really likes that. How differently do you work with individuals, people that are not necessarily in partnerships? How different is that as opposed to working with couples?
Well, I think the main thing is that when we bring couples together, what Dean mentioned earlier is that in order to have the coaching be successful, we have to have a shared goal. So the couple has to have a shared goal. Well, when you're working with an individual, they have their own whatever it is that they're wanting. And so it's a way, and actually what can be very powerful as you experience is to have a coach for yourself as an individual, and then have a relationship coach where you're focusing on the couple. And it's not always necessary, and it depends on what's coming up. But I think something that you noticed is when you were really getting into some of your trauma, it was very supportive for you to be able to have someone who is there just for you. And so for me, that's what I would say is that working with individuals, it's one of the things that I love is that, and I would say this is part of just what's natural for me, is to see through to essence. And when I'm working with an individual, that's something that's instantaneous. and working with a couple, there's a lot of dynamics going on. So there's a lot more energy. So it's a really different experience, and the essence is all there. And I love seeing through and seeing, and then seeing, oh, the essence of the relationship. So I don't
Yeah.
know. That's for me. That's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I think for me, with working with individuals, since I really not focus, but for me, it's my body, a lot of body intelligence. And when I'm with an individual, I can see if they're stiff or if they're not breathing. And so, really, to get them to move their body and presence their fear, because that's usually where it all starts, is they're scared. So, okay, so we need to address that first. Okay, let's get up. Let's do some fear melters and really learn. They learn about, oh, wow, I was really scared or I was angry. And so, for me, tuning into that and then stepping into the other parts that they're looking for as far as goals and what they're trying to create. And just like in couples, if they're both sitting there and they're like, okay, how about we take a break and just get up, or just move your body a little, change your position. That way you get into your body, because we tend to, all of us, get really rigid when we're doing something intense. It's like, okay. And so, yeah, learning to just move your body in some way.
And it's sort of like what we were talking about before. When I'm on a computer and I'm like leaned in and I'm typing, my body gets scared because it's not made to do that. It's not made to be contracted. And so it's funny that we haven't talked about breathing, which is one of the most, I know you would recognize that we
Yes.
always, I would say it's always start a session with some kind of breathing exercise. So learning how to breathe fully was the game changer
Yes.
for both of us.
Yeah.
And so I used to breathe very shallowly. I breathed up into my chest. And so learning how to take deep belly breaths and have that be how I breathe all the time. So what a miraculous thing that is, to let ourselves have full breath throughout our days. So that's another way that we actually presence and move through fear.
Oh, yeah.
And let our body know that we're safe, right? So when we're breathing and we're softening our belly, we're letting our body and our mind know that we're safe, our nervous system know that we're safe here. We're safe here. So such, like you said, simple practices that are so miraculous.
Yeah.
And they really do work. And I kind of want to emphasize again to our listeners that, I mean, the work that we've done with you has been really teaching us how to come from a place of not blaming, but speaking from the heart, or conscious loving, knowing how to communicate how we're feeling, and then learning to be an ally. And then what I love most about it all is then having agreements. Once we get past that obstacle or that struggle, is making an agreement about it so that we are clear. So what does 2022 look like for you? Are you going to continue to offer services online?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, it's something
Yes.
that's so fun for us. We have something called Conscious Date Night, which is something that we used to have at our home, actually, with local people. And creating an online version of that is something that we're super excited about. And I don't know if you want to tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Conscious Date Night it's not a intense coaching thing. It's about tools that's going to connect each other and just have fun and play and really give each other your full attention and just receive and give. And that's really what we created. It's not about, like I said, it's not about this intensity of coaching and going deep. It's about just connecting. I'm not disconnecting. It's about connecting together and having a good time.
Yeah.
So instead of, watching TV or, going to a movie, hey, come to a date night, and the connection with other couples and sharing the experience is so juicy. It's very, very good.
It is juicy. And I want to say that coaching doesn't have to be intense, but I know what Dean was saying, because as you know, Maya, sometimes it does get intense and it can go really deep. And then other times it's really playful and easy. And one of the things that we really focus on is having transformation feel easy, not having it feel like really hard work. And so that's why we also love conscious date night, because it's a time to do a dose of some giving and receiving of love and play, while not going so deep.
Right.
So that it's like a little, it's like going out to dinner and having a great time, but on that deeper level, which is a lot of fun.
So it's the date nights and then more of this with individual clients. And also you continue to offer fitness programs, right?
Yeah.
That would be great to.
I have some clients that like fitness and coaching. I have clients that I do both. And then I have just a traditional coaching, and I mean traditional fitness, but I always throw in little seeds in there. And if they don't, and they don't know it, I just like throw in little things. I also do a 15-minute, like a startup in the mornings. I do where I get you on a phone or like get on live, and I'll do some breathing practices, some movement, some intentions for your day. And that's been very powerful for people. Just 15 minutes, kind of just like your get up and go guy, get you going. And so, I'm just going to keep offering. I love that.
Wow, that's great. Yes. It's like a booster, like a boost to your day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it really is. And a lot of it is about learning how to breathe properly. So it's a mixture of setting an intention, breathing fully, there's a bunch of different breathing practices that Dean uses. And I love it. It's I think we used to call it the START program. And I don't think we have a name for it anymore, but it's a thing that we just do. And I love that. We're also going to be offering, we've had a platform where off of social media that we're really enjoying, which is a Mighty Networks network. And so it's Awaken Your Aliveness, and it's a place where we offer videos with the latest tips we have for relationship, or like you mentioned, the blue zones. We are big followers of the blue zones. So how can we bring whole health to ourselves and to our full lives? So that's something that we're going to be expanding into 2022. So lots going on, lots of fun.
And can you share with our listeners the best way that they can reach out or sign up for any newsletters? So your website, if you're on Facebook, anything like that.
Yeah, well, the best place is to go to our website, which is micheleanddean.com. And my name has one L, although the 2L works too. So it's Michele, MicheleAndDean.com. And on the homepage, you can press the button there and subscribe for our emails. We only send one email a week, and it'll let you know of our latest happenings that are going on, and videos that'll be quick tips that you can watch that you can use right away to create joy in your life, in your creativity, in your relationship.
We'll have to have you back on, and hopefully next time Riz can join us so he can add from his perspective what his experience has been like. I feel like I'm growing as a person, and it's always been hard for me to ask for my needs. And I'm learning that. And the more that I learn to do that, the more my self-esteem goes up, because I'm using my voice. I'm speaking up for myself. And I'm going to close up basically by inviting our listeners to basically, if you're interested in receiving support in savoring your relationships and living a thriving life, please reach out to Michele and Dean. There's a reason I brought them on here. I really believe in their work. I think it's really transformational, and the tools are practical. They're easy. And I love that you guide us, on a weekly basis. You work with us. And so I want to thank you, Michele and Dean, for being on the show. And it meant a lot to me that you were able to share with our listeners.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. Great pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for the work you're doing in the world.
Thank you.
So love it.
You've been listening to the Healthy Lifestyle Solutions podcast with your host, Maya Acosta. If you've enjoyed this podcast, do us a favor and share with one friend who can benefit from this episode. Feel free to leave us an honest review on Apple Podcasts. That helps us to spread our message. You can also head on over to podinbox.com/HLS to leave me a voicemail. Don't forget to subscribe. And as always, thank you for listening.